system that just drains all the water off down to the end. But we put these in, there is some pruning, there is a little care taking place, but we put them in here in September. Then by the end of October, 1st of November, we'll start picking. Pick all through December. The thing that we try to do, since we are hydroponic, since we can control the environment a little bit, we attempt to grow off season of everybody else. That's our biggest time, is we try to have the produce when no one else has it.
Here we go. Let me see if you can reach over here. Within the tomato greenhouse, we start about 800 plants in the fall, usually around end of July, and from seed. We'll move them into the greenhouse sometime around the 1st of September and then start picking tomatoes, usually late October, 1st of November. They will be just breaking color, more or less like this one. That's what they call vine ripe in a store. We're growing 2 plants per pot. What we ordinarily do is get these suckers off the bottom. They're growing in perlite, which is a horticultural grade. We have drip lines coming in with the nutrients and water about 1 minute every 30 minutes throughout the day.
You see the roots already sprouted on the plant. This is our lettuce house, and we germinate all the lettuce from a seed. This tray is ready to be planted. You have a plant in each little 1-inch oasis. We just break that apart and stick the oasis in each hole. The roots will start growing and reaching down to the water underneath it, and then all the nutrients and everything are in the water, and that just keeps in the same bed until we change the water. This is tested, we keep the pH right, and nutrients are added to this water as needed. We've got a little motor, so the water's flowing a little bit, get a little oxygen in it, and does pretty good for about 3 grow-ins, and then we'll drain this, sanitize it, put clean water in. As far as farming, we call it dirt farming, but field farming or row cropping or anything like that, the land is becoming less and less. You can ride up and down the roads and see the development, the subdivisions. The farms are disappearing. This, you can see we can do this in a very small area. We can change from year to year, we can change crops that we want to grow, but it's just, you can just grow a tremendous amount of produce in a very small area.
I'm Aaron Wood. I'm here in McCormick County at my family farm, Pine View Farm. We raise beef cattle and pine trees. Today we're vaccinating and deworming cattle, and also putting a pour-on insecticide
and John
to control lice. We want to keep
I just
our
wanted to make sure I knew where you were
healthy
at.
and comfortable as possible.
And is John Fogle is back in the back?
Care
Okay.
for them just like we care for ourselves and our own family members. We want to prevent them from being sick. If cattle are healthy, then they're more productive. And so we want to do everything we can to keep them healthy.
If we can, I'm going to ask everyone to come in and grab a seat. We're getting ready to get started.
To get them up and be able to sort and separate them. We've got a couple of smaller pens that we...
Please come on in and grab a seat. We're getting ready to get started with our program, and I've asked staff to kind of close the doors in the back except for the one in the center so that we kind of cut down on a little bit of noise in the hall. But I hope you'll come on in and move on up close to the front. And we're getting ready to get started with our program. It probably is. You just work from this one. Okay, if we can, we'll go ahead and get started with things. We've got a number of things we're going to cover today, but I want to start off by kind of welcoming you to the 78th Annual South Carolina Farm Bureau Annual Meeting. In the center of your program, I hope you'll look at it. You'll see a lot of things, activities that we've got at the convention, and I encourage you to also download our app on your smartphone. The instructions are inside of your program, or the South Carolina Farm Bureau staff can help you. But I do want you to look at the inside of the program and note a couple of things. This morning, our key things are we're going to hold our open resolution session in just a couple of minutes. And then we're going to have some opening remarks, and we're going to have a nice presentation by our American Farm Bureau President, Zippy Duval, followed by our Commissioner of Agriculture, Mr. Hugh Weathers. And then we'll have an open discussion about some local government issues. At the end of the general session, about 10:30, we'll have a coffee break in the Cambridge Hall just outside of here. New this year is the Big Farm Show. Has been redesigned because we lost the tent as Farmers Hall. So you'll notice all of our exhibitors all down the hall, the outside, and all down this hallway to kind of give our exhibitors space to show which we've done in the past at the big tent outside, but we're doing it inside this year. Our government relations staff will deliver a legislative update during our lunch today. Everyone's invited to attend. Lunch will be served in Cambridge Hall, and you'll be seated in Kensington A, B, and C. And basically, those are the rooms that are directly behind us right here. Afternoon educational sessions will begin promptly at 1:15. Today's educational sessions include gene editing, evaluating grain drying systems, footprint for the future, discussion about ensuring sustainability for your farm. We've got 2 pesticide applicator workshops where you can get your credits there. We have a CAM recertification workshop. We also have a South Carolina Agri Wellness update, and we've got direct-to-consumer marketing panel and also some social media training. Also this afternoon, the Marketing Association will hold their annual meeting at 1:15. The Young Farmer Excellence in Agriculture presentations will start at 1:30, and our Young Farmer discussion meet will start at 4 o'clock with the finals at 5:15. The excellence presentations and discussion meets are open to everyone to come and show your support for young leaders. We do ask you to be there on time and be seated, because once the presentations do start, we close the doors and don't allow additional people in. We do encourage any young farmers ages 18 to 35 in your county to attend the Young Farmer Conference in February. That'll be held February the 4th and 5th in Charleston. Also, the South Carolina Awards and Recognition Program will be held here this evening at 7:30. We'll be presenting our Distinguished Service Award, Outstanding Educator Award, Membership Awards, Young Farmer and Rancher Awards, and the County Performance Awards. As a reminder, bidding for the silent auction ends at 7:15 this evening, prior to the awards program. Proceeds from the silent auction and the Farmers Market and Gift Fair go to benefit our Ag Education, our Education in Action, and Ag in the Classroom programs, and the South Carolina Farm Bureau Foundation for Agriculture. You must pick up your silent auction items tonight by 10 o'clock. We'll have the room open for you to pick those things up this evening after our awards program. But we do encourage you to also look at one of the new things that we're doing, which is our silent auction is online. So while you're sitting in this session, when you're sitting in the educational sessions this afternoon, or even during the afternoon, if you're out shopping, you can be bidding on items in our silent auction, and we encourage you to participate in that as much as you can. Tomorrow, Saturday, is our business day. Our voting delegate session tomorrow morning begins promptly at 8:30, and our annual meeting concludes with the ambassador contest presentations at 1:30 here in the Embassy Suites. To kind of get the meeting started officially, I'd like to call on John Fogle to come up and provide us with an invocation this morning. John.
Good morning. Let us pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come together as the Farm Bureau. And Lord, we just ask your blessings upon each and every one here. And Lord, as we go about the Farm Bureau business, let us do so with wisdom and understanding. We ask you to be with us as the God of grace, mercy, and peace, to see that each and everything that we do glorifies your name. We ask you to be with us through this, at the end with traveling mercies, but inside of all we do, may we have you in mind first. Be with us, Lord. Strengthen, guide us. Have us follow that path that you would have us follow instead of the one we make for ourselves. Again, Lord, thank you for all that you have done for us, and we give you all the praise and glory. It is in his name we pray. Amen.
Now I'd like to call on Chris Stevens, chair of our Young Farmer Committee, and he's going to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
If y'all would stand with me. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We'll now begin our open resolution session. Anyone that has a resolution that they would like to present, we'd like to ask you to come forward and present any resolutions that you might have. Anyone? And I'm going to turn this over to President Ott.
Thank you, Larry. Good morning, everybody. Jeb, I see you standing. Have you got a resolution? Have we got a microphone? You can come up here if you want to. We don't have a microphone. Come on up here, Jeb. That's all right. Just come right in.
All right, thank you. I'm bringing this forward from Chester County. Mr. Rusty Darby is our state director. He's not able to be here. He said he's sorry he's not able to be here, but he asked for me to bring this forward. It deals with cotton, loan deficiency payments, LDP. If a producer has an on-call contract on an eligible commodity that has unpriced production or subject to price risk, meaning not subject to agreed upon price in the future, at the time a loan deficiency payment becomes available, the unpriced amount would be eligible for the LDP payment.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any other resolutions to be presented at this time? I remind you now, if you want us to take it up tomorrow, now would be the time to add any new resolutions. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution given by Jeb Wilson. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. We will take that up, Jeb, tomorrow. All right. I think I'm ready to introduce a really good friend. 6 years ago, when I was down here running for election to president, I met a guy right out in the hall who had announced that he was running for president of American Farm Bureau. And I had never met Zippy before in my life. And we met out there and we struck a common bond because we both love agriculture. We both came off a farm. And for the next 6 years, I will honestly say that I have formed a real unique and wonderful friendship with President Duvall. He has provided wonderful leadership in Washington. He travels all across the country getting a taste of what is agriculture like in South Carolina. Well, what's it like in California? What's it like in New York? What's it like in Washington State and everything in between? And that's what it takes, as we know, to be a good leader in the agricultural community, is to have a broad base of understanding of all the different things that go into making up agriculture. Zippy has provided that leadership. He has worked and made relationships on Capitol Hill that have benefited each and every one of us that call ourselves farmers. So it is my great pleasure to welcome and introduce you to the President of the President of American Farm Bureau, Zippy Duval. Let's give him a welcome.
Well, thank you, Harry, and I appreciate that friendship that we have built, and you're exactly right. We didn't know each other, and we've become very good friends and have a good working relationship. I'll tell you, Harry Ott does a fantastic job representing the South Carolina farmer, and you should be proud of him. Y'all have always sent good leadership to serve at the American Farm Bureau level, and I always appreciate that so much. And when you're president, you realize the talents of the people that come and serve on that board, and once you learn those talents, you can utilize them to the fullest potential, and Harry, especially during this time, has a very unique history that helps us motivate through a lot of things right now. So thank you so much, Harry, for your efforts and hard work. I just love the annual meetings. I must love them because I've been on the road. It's been a lot. I tell you, I started the week out in Arkansas, went to Kentucky. I flew here late last night. I'm going to Illinois when I leave here. I'll end up in Alabama on Sunday, Tennessee on Monday, and Maryland on Tuesday, and then I'm going to go home and sleep for 2-3 days. So. But it's good to come out. You know, we come together and we get old friendships together. We eat too much. We have a good time, and then we do the most important work of our organization, that's policy. And I try to make sure that I tell all the county leaders that come to our state conventions, I know how it is to be on farm and the office manager call and say it's time to look through the policy book and how you dread doing that. But I'm telling you, that time you spend looking through that policy book, Jeb, you coming up here doing what you just did, that time is very well spent. I'm telling you, it's so important to make sure that policy book is right, because when Andrew, who's with you today, is going to talk to you about carbon credits, when he goes to talk about carbon credits, he's going to look and see what you said about carbon credits in that policy book. And if you're not there paying attention, you're not keeping it up to date, we will be behind, and we will not be doing what you want us to do. So it is important work. Don't ever think it's not. It's the most important thing you'll do as a leader of grassroots of County Farm Bureau. So thank you so much. You know, I try to bring a little light on what the situation we're in, and Washington is a different place, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But you know, to me, this is a special time of year, not just because of Thanksgiving and Christmas, but we're kind of in between Veterans Day and December the 7th, which is that infamous day that we'll always remember when Pearl Harbor was bombed. And it just makes me think about those young men and women that served us over the years in our military to give us our freedoms. And then, of course, and just to celebrate their selfless service, I like to recognize them. Before I do that, though, I'd like to tell you a story just to give you the real feeling of what those men and women risked and what those families sacrificed for us to have these freedoms. You know, during the Iraq War, there was this young farmer that decided he was going to go to the Army and become a Black Hawk pilot. And he ended up over in Iraq during the surge. They were doing 6-month tours, but when they got into the surge, they quit doing that and started keeping them there. And he stayed 18 months, flew 119 combat missions. But this one particular mission he ran, he left early that morning with 18 brave individuals in the back of his helicopter, knowing that he was taking them to the most dangerous place in Iraq. He said the hardest part of his job was to land on the ground and watch those brave individuals jump out of his helicopter into battle. He said about 3 or 4 hours later, he was refueling, fixing to run another mission, and he hears that same group of men and men call and say that they have someone who's critically injured and they need a medevac. During the surge, the medevacs were slim, and they told them they couldn't get to them, said they just had to hang on. They get to them as quick as they could. Well, they kept calling, and they kept saying, we're going to lose him if we don't get him out of here. The third time he called, that young captain says, he looked at his crew chief and says, I took him there and I'm going to go get him. I don't have any orders to do that. Probably going to get in trouble. I can't ask you to go, but I'm going to go get him. And his crew chief says, Captain, where you go, we go. So they fly off into danger to pick them people up and to get that man out and try to save his life. He said when he landed his helicopter and he turned the tail toward the fire, he saw him running out with a gurney, and one of the guys that was carrying the gurney got shot in the leg, and he said, I looked over my right shoulder and said, I saw the bravest man I ever known jump out of a helicopter and run out into that to help get that injured man in the helicopter. I tell you this story because the men and women that we're fixing to recognize sacrificed a lot. Those of us who have not served have no idea what they faced and what they sacrificed. I do know what their families sacrificed because that young pilot was my son. But he said that brave man that jumped out of his helicopter to help was a high school teacher from New Orleans. We come from all walks of life. 44% of the people that serve us in our military come from rural America, your neighbors all across America. And at this time, I want to recognize every person in this room that has took time out of their life and went and served our country so that we can be here today and so that we can go to church on Sunday. So if you're in this room and you've served our country, please stand up and let us recognize you like you deserve to be recognized. Please stand up. Like these brave men come back home, men and women come back home and made a productive life in their rural communities and became farmers. My son's back at home and he's safe and got 3 grandchildren from me. And I tell him, I said, son, you're a good soldier, but you're a better dad. And I am really proud of that. So I tell that story to talk about the brave thousands of men and women that's done that, not to bring highlight to my son, but to the men and women that give us the right to be able to be free. So thank you. I hope that all of you had the opportunity to visit our virtual convention last year. For the first time in over 100 years, we didn't get to meet in person because of the pandemic. But you know, it was a challenge, but a great experience because we were able to touch about 4,000 people more than what we normally do. Some of them were farmers and ranchers that their schedules never allowed them to go to the convention, and some of them were people from all over the world that just wanted to know what Farm Bureau was really about. And it was our time to be able to show the world the heart of this great organization and why it really is a Farm Bureau family. Our theme there was Stronger Together, and it really, really did radiate all through the year. As we worked together through the pandemic, we did become stronger together, working and communicating in a different way. But one of the ways that made us stronger together was #StillFarming. I don't know if you remember that March when we all went to the grocery store and the shelves were kind of empty and everybody was scared to death. You and I knew where the food was, and we could go out back and catch catfish or kill a deer if we had to. But there was millions of Americans that had no idea of where they was going to get their food. And all of a sudden, that person that we call farmer became important in their life. And we started #StillFarming to be able to share your story and to assure American citizens that the farmer, regardless of hurricane, regardless of pandemic, or regardless of anything that hits us, we're still going to get up and go to work in the morning and provide that food and fiber for them. And it was a great success. We touched over 110 million people, went into 90 different countries, and it was an amazing campaign that continues today and still helps us tell your story. And of course, we're coming up on January. We'll have our convention in my backyard in Atlanta, Georgia this year. Hopefully it won't snow and sleet like it did 10 years ago when we all went, David. Hopefully we'll have good weather for everybody coming in. We hope that you'll take a short drive over to Atlanta and visit your national convention and see what all we have to offer and see the work that's going on there. I will tell you on Monday morning, Secretary Perdue, who was Secretary during the Trump administration, Sunday morning we'll be doing our devotion. And he'll be at the convention with us. And I know that because President Trump came to 3 of the conventions that he was president, he came and it didn't really give us the opportunity to visit with Secretary Perdue like he always wanted to do. So he'll be there during the convention, and I hope you'll have time to visit with him while he's there. So as we got stronger together, we're now in the process of growing together, and I have traveled this country this year, and this is the 28th state I've been in. And it has been a great trip across America. I wanted to really hear the stories of how people survived the pandemic so I could carry those stories and issue back to Washington, D.C. But as I went, my heart was blessed. I got to see the optimism that the American farmer and rancher has in his heart. I got to see the resilience and the passion. I got to see how they cared for their community and giving back over $5 million and a million pounds of food and hundreds of thousands of volunteer hours serving their community, even going through a difficult time on their farm or their ranch. I saw how young farmer committees stayed connected with young farmers across America through YF&R Connect. I saw how the leadership women's committees went over and beyond to try to educate and inform people about agriculture in the schools and through civic clubs. But I also saw that not everything was good going across America in agriculture. There were some real issues, and Harry will tell you every week on our weekly president's call, if there was an issue facing a state, the next week we had somebody on that call trying to give us some answers and figure out a way to go through it. And we had everybody from President Trump to Secretary Perdue to all people in between them that answered questions that we needed answered. It was just really interesting to see how we, as an organization, went from just policy mainly to really problem solving, and we did a lot of problem solving during that time. But outside the issues, we continue to do other work around mental health on the farm. And with a partnership with Farmers Union and Ag Credit, we started Farm State of Mind to put out resources for family members or people in your community that might have been facing a mental stress and having a difficult time. That website is very, very informative. And I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, after losing Bonnie, I knew what mental stress was because I dairied all my life. If you ain't never been stressed, just go on a dairy business a little while. But nothing like what it was when I lost my loved one that I spent 40 years with. And I'll tell you, I needed somebody to lend me an ear. And a reporter from North Dakota lended me his ear one day, and I don't know why it was him. He just said something that kind of set it off. And my pressure valve just kind of blew, and I let it all out, and I've been getting better ever since. If there's people in your family, in your community that's having a hard time, there's resources there to help them, and you definitely have an ear you can lend. And just like a storm that goes through the farmer's house this afternoon, or farm this afternoon, tears his fence down, blows his barn away, you're there the next morning helping him clean up and fix it. Mental stress is no different. That's a storm within his life and his family, and we need to make sure that we're aware of that and that we're there for him. It's okay to say you're not okay. Shame on us, the ones that think that we're just so tough we can make it through everything. It's okay not to be okay, and it's our job to make sure we take care of our friends and neighbors. As I traveled, I saw the caring heart of the American Farm Bureau. I seen the selfless service, and I seen the leadership. When I saw states like Idaho fighting back against a congressman that wants to tear out 3 dams that provides locks going down 500 miles out to the Pacific that carries 10% of America's production out of it. He wants to tear those dams down because he doesn't want it to be in the way of the salmon. And they've spent millions of dollars of building what I call a handicap ramp for them salmon to make it up and back down. And they're 98% successful. But for that 2%, he wants to tear those dams down and put 100,000 trucks back on the road to carry the same grain. That's the kind of policies we're seeing this day and time, and that's why we got to continue to push back. And I saw county and state farm bureau working together to work against that. I went to the border and saw what was happening at the border. And let me tell you, the farmers and ranchers along the border feel like America has turned their back on them. You want to talk about humanitarian issues? Well, it's not just the people that's coming up through there. It's the men and women that live on our side of the border that are getting punished. If they leave their homes, they got to take their children with them. They come back, they got to open up the door with a gun drawn. They got to check under the beds and look in all the closets before they lay down and sleep at night. Now, where in America do we have to do that in our countryside? Something has to be done, and all 50 states came together to sign a letter to talk to the president about that issue there. And then I went to Puerto Rico, and I really realized what a disconnect there is when there's a language barrier, and how important the Farm Bill is on other soil than just our home soil. It's been an amazing thing, but as we continue to move along, we're now focused on growing tomorrow. And for 102 years, we figured out a way to work with whoever the voters sent to Washington, D.C. It's my job to build those relationships so that Andrew and others in our policy shop can come in behind and do the fine work that they do. But I'll tell you, it's a different place in Washington. Usually, where there is partisanship, usually the only place sometimes you can find bipartisanship was in the ag committees, and we're having a difficult time even finding it there today. But we continue to work through those issues and work with this administration on WOTAs. Andrew's here to talk about carbon credit, and Andrew has led the way with your policy book in his back pocket to meet with the historic alliance called the Food and Ag Climate Alliance that I'm very proud of, that we've done work with, trying to head off anything bad that's coming around climate policies that might end up in our backyard. And he's done a tremendous job there, even to flow over into the discussion around 30 by 30. And if you read that white document, that white page document, it almost reads like a Farm Bureau paper. Now, we know that devils are in details. We're going to continue to watch to see what happens in that document to make sure that they continue to treat us like partners and not like their enemy. We're working with this administration to bring fairness to the livestock market, to work on trade. We're very disappointed. We're not talking about trade more than we are, but we're pushing hard to try to make something move there. Working with them on infrastructure. And yes, we did have a bipartisan infrastructure bill to pass, something that we have been asking for decades. And our roads and bridges and docks and dams and ports and everything need help. And if you remember, and I'll remind you, I don't know whether you heard it or not, but Secretary Perdue, when he was there, he says the only thing that sets us apart from the rest of the world, the Brazils and China and all the other countries that can grow a crop just as good as you and I can, the only thing that sets us apart is our infrastructure. And it was crumbling and needs rebuilt, and that's the only way we're going to stay ahead and competitive with the rest of the world. I was on the phone just the other month with our counterparts in Brazil, and I just asked them what was their really production capacity. And they said if they had the infrastructure we had, they could double their production without cutting another tree. And tell me infrastructure is important. That said it all that day. Broadband, There's a lot of money in this bill, not Build Back, but the infrastructure bill that we supported. We do not support the Build Back Better bill, but we did support the infrastructure bill. But there's a lot of money in that infrastructure bill for broadband. If you think about what broadband can do to rural America, you remember for years and years and years we've lost our young people from our communities. It's held our being able to give health care to our rural communities back. It's slowed down everything in our rural communities, and we've almost seen them dry up in a lot of places across this country. Broadband could be the revitalization of rural America. Where young people are more and more working from home, they can do it thousands of miles away and live in Kansas or rural South Carolina or rural Georgia. It could revitalize our rural communities and bring life back to our little towns, and that's how important it is. We continue to work on having a stronger supply chain. We continue to work on labor. I know how important labor is, and it's been one of the big focuses of my tenure here, and we're going to continue to be. It is probably the most difficult issue that we try to talk about because the politics keeps us from finding that solution that we know what it is, and we'll get there someday, hopefully. I also know that your staffing in your FSA offices are not where they're supposed to be. And I'll tell you, we do not support a mandate for people to get vaccinations. We support people getting vaccinations. I will talk to anyone about the importance of you getting your vaccination. But shame on me if I tell you that in a free country that you have to go get it. So just to know where we stand on that one, and hopefully everyone will see the importance of being vaccinated and not just protecting themselves, but protecting the future for their children and protecting everyone else around us. Your policy book is the most important thing you do, and I've said that and I can't say it enough, and I look forward to the resolutions you bring out here. So I would ask you, why do we join Farm Bureau? We're hardworking, God-fearing, but we have a great story to tell. And I'll tell you, the time you spend outside your fence row talking about your farms, the time you open up your farm to a Senate or House congressional staff, the time you go to a town hall meeting or spend a little time at your high school or a grammar school, that time is very valuable. We polled Americans and tried to find out what they thought about us and asked questions about a lot of different professions. And in that, we found out that 80% of Americans trust farmers. It was the most trusted profession that we surveyed. And we need to be outside our fence road making sure we retain that trust because it is important because that trust will what dictates what happens in the marketplace in the future. But it all starts with you in the County Farm Bureau. Harry's job's important. My job's important. But our job's not nearly as important as yours is. The most powerful people in this organization sitting in front of me. It's not us. It's the work that you do and the reputation that this organization has built off of your work, that we're one united voice, and that carries a big stick in Washington, D.C. For 102 years, we've done some good things, and we need to be proud of that. But we don't need to sit back on what we've accomplished in the past. We need to continue to move forward. So I would ask you, we're all farmers. We all plant seeds. Well, most of us in here in the South, we come from the Bible Belt. Most of us are born-again Christians. So we planting seeds as we walk every day. So I want to ask you, what kind of seeds are you planting this morning? When you went to breakfast or got on the elevator or when you stand out in the hall? Are you planting seeds of happiness or sadness? Are you planting seeds of success or failure? Are you planting seeds of opportunity or challenge? Or are you planting seeds of hope or despair? If you're watching 24-hour news, it's probably despair. But I'm telling you, in Jeremiah 29:11, the Lord says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to hurt you, plans to give you hope and a future. I don't know about you, but the seed I'm going to plant all day long is plant the seed of hope. You know, life throws us curves all the time. It might be in our farming business, it might be in our personal lives, it might be in our business lives, or just a relationship with a friend. And God threw me a curve. He took my first love away from me because she belonged to him anyway. We spent 40 years together and raised 4 children. I didn't know whether I could face the future or not. And I surely didn't know if I'd ever love again. But God is good. God is good. And if we focus on him, he'll take care of us. God's so good, he sent me another love in my life. And in 2 weeks, I'll be remarried to her. Not that I love my first love any less, but that he knew that I needed love in my life. You know, as we focus on the future, and you ask yourself, has Farm Bureau got a future? You better believe we got a future. There's a lot of things we still got to do. If you think about your farms, does your farm have a future? It better. The American people need for you to have a future. As we continue our work growing tomorrow, we're going to plant that seed of hope. And we're going to plant it in the young people. We're going to plant it in the farmers. We're going to plant it with our friends and neighbors. And we're going to plant it in the people that serve us each and day at our state capitals and in Washington, D.C. And we're going to be there to do what American farmers and ranchers have always done, and that's to provide a good food source and the national security that we provide by doing what we do. It is an honor and privilege for me to serve as your president, and I want to thank you personally from all the farmers across America for the time that you take and the sacrifice you make to come here and be here today to take care of our policy. Thank you for what you're doing, and let's just keep moving forward and planting those seeds of hope. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Zippy. We really appreciate you taking the time to stop by South Carolina. We know you've got a lot of traveling to do ahead of you, and so we wish you safe travels as you make your way to all these other Farm Bureau annual meetings. But we certainly do appreciate you taking the time to come and share your remarks with us in South Carolina. Thank you. And congratulations. 2 weeks, that's not long. Better enjoy these next 2 weeks. All right, I think we are going to do something. All right, our next guest, generally y'all hear from Commissioner Weathers on Thursday night. He had a busy schedule and we had a busy agenda. We heard from the governor last night where we usually hear from the commissioner, but we found a spot on his calendar where he could come and be with us today. I want to say thank you, Commissioner, for finding a time to come and share some remarks. Hugh and I grew up pretty much in the same community. He's over in Orangeburg metropolitan area, and I'm in St. Matthews, the little country place. But Bowman's about like St. Matthews. So we've known each other quite a long time, and I am very proud of the relationship that Farm Bureau and the Department of Agriculture has developed over the last few years. I talk about team all the time. This is not an individual sport that we are in. This is a team sport. And the larger and the better and the stronger the team is, the better we can represent your interest. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce the Commissioner of the South Carolina Department of Agriculture, Hugh Weathers, who is a member of the team. Thank you.
hint of tiger rag as I was walking up here. What are y'all doing? Harry, thank you. And you're right, it was a busy day yesterday, and I'm glad you got to hear from the governor. I'll tell you before I start, I certainly applaud Governor McMaster for his interest in agriculture and where we're going. But I do appreciate the chance to visit with you this morning because this is somewhat of an anniversary for me. 40 years ago this year, I came to my first Farm Bureau meeting. And the discussion meet that is tomorrow, I participated in that, and believe it or not, I won. But I won something better. I won the hand of Blanche, who's been my wife for 38 years. When she used to work at Farm Bureau, we met that year down here. So anyway, Farm Bureau meetings always have a great spot in my heart. It's been an interesting 40 years. Most of the time I stand in the back talking and not paying a lot of attention. But over those years, I've listened to great discussions, whether we were talking about raising cigarette tax and what it could do, or whether we were talking about starting a political action committee and what that could do for Farm Bureau. So it's been a privilege to be a part of those. But for the last 17 years, I've participated in these meetings with a different hat on, the hat that I wear now. And that's been interesting. 6 years ago, as Harry said, we had quite an interesting year down here, the year of the flood, the year of our first of 2,000-year floods. After Hurricane Joaquin, Harry, you had an interesting first week on the job, I'll say that, when we immediately tried to get some help from that flood, which we were able to do. And then 6 months ago, we had a flood or a crisis of a different kind, again, working together on behalf of some grain and cotton farmers who found themselves in a fix, but always working together. And that's why really the essence of Farm Bureau existing for the last nearly 80 years is to work together, to find those solutions. And it's really why in these last few years I've come to have a great appreciation for the value of teamwork, the role of the commissioner, and the responsibilities that I have to work for you. Zippy mentioned that we need to focus on the future, and that is absolutely correct. I mentioned to all of my non-farm audiences around the state that it is agriculture that ties South Carolina's past to the present, and more especially to the future. You know, agriculture put us on the map centuries ago. We understand where agriculture is today. We'll talk a little bit about that and some of the issues. But really, the point of this meeting, the point of what we do as leadership is to focus on the future of where our industry goes. And I am reminded of a favorite verse in Scripture that I think it's Luke 9:62 that says, anybody puts a hand on the plow and looks backwards is not fit for the kingdom of heaven. So we have to look forward and understand that the plow is doing its job, and we'll look ahead. So that's really what we'll talk about a little bit today. Let's talk a little bit about where agriculture, the issues we're facing, and maybe some of the ways we should approach them. So we all know the statistics, I hope you do, that agribusiness, everything that we grow, everything that we process, everything that we deliver to the South Carolina consumer is the largest part of South Carolina's economy. Just earlier this week, I spoke to a group, and someone said, well, I thought it was tourism. I said, well, look, you're only half wrong, because tourism is about half the size of agribusiness. Take it all together, the things that we do to put products out there, nearly 247,000 people employed in this industry. Farming is the production, agriculture is the base of it all, but it is a partnership between the farmers and everyone between ourselves and the final consumer. Looking a little more at today, I think everyone will agree we're going to have a great year in 2021. A lot of great yields, good prices, but we all know what's on the horizon. We're going to have a storm of a different kind next year as we fight input costs with fertilizer prices, fuel prices. I'm sure you're going to talk about that over the weekend, so I don't need to harp on that. So that's one of the crises. But one of the things, again, before I move on about where we stand today, South Carolina agriculture is a winner. And the reason I say that is I look at Sam Hall over there, and I'm sure Bob may be in the room, but Bob Hall was our 4th South Carolina farmer to win the Farmer of the Year at the Ag Expo in October in Georgia, and that covers 14 states. So it's recognized the quality of the members of the South Carolina farm family. And again, congratulations to Bob Hall. The NASS statistics tell us some things that are changing in agriculture. We have more smaller farms in the state. Our acreage of farmland is under a little bit of change. And Harry and I, we've had several discussions about that. I imagine that'll be a priority for Farm Bureau, and the policy is how do we maintain farmland preservation. So the challenges of today include that as well. Hopefully we are moving out of COVID. With this new variant, we'll have to see how that unfolds. But with that, how do we leverage some of the things that we've learned in the time of COVID? Zippy mentioned the surveys of the American public that puts the farmer in the highest regard, even higher than doctors and nurses, is what we found in some of the research that we did. So how do we make use of that for agriculture? We think that people will have an ongoing desire to know more about who's growing their food, how are they growing it, and what practices are we using, how much is coming from the United States, how much is coming from other parts of the world where we don't have that type of control. So with COVID, we have to take advantage of it. I think we've used the term, phrase before, never waste a good crisis. So with the crisis that we've all endured for the nearly last 2 years, let's take advantage of that. And how are we going to do that? Well, the state is going to get the next tranche of money will be nearly $9 billion. A lot of those dollars will go directly to counties and cities and other institutions, but the state General Assembly will appropriate $2.5 billion. We have asked, and this is after a lot of good discussion with Harry and Gary Spires and others, we're asking for over $90 million for agriculture. A lot of uses for that, which include funding of the resiliency account that was established a few years back, maybe 2 years back. They established a resiliency fund but didn't put any funds in it. So we're asking to do that one. That one may be a stretch. As I said earlier, this past year we had some crisis that we met, and through that we have depleted the reserve funds for the grain funds that we have all been benefiting from for the last number of years. So with the grain fund depleted, we're going to ask to replenish that and expand its availability to other farmers. So that's a big part of what we're asking for. One of the things I'm most excited about is processing grants to help those in agriculture across the state who want to expand food processing in the state, whether it's meat or poultry or vegetables or seafood, you name it, so that the next time we have an interruption in our food supply, whether it's COVID, whether it's something like that, we are a little more insulated from those interruptions. So we want to come alongside with a matching grant to help do those things. We did, during COVID, did something I was very proud of. We did what we call Farmers to Food Bank. And with that, we raised privately through our foundation about $500,000 and got South Carolina farmers to sell products to South Carolina food banks that in turn did what they do, and that is distribute to people in need. Of course, during COVID, those numbers were so increased drastically, so Farmers to Food Bank was a $500,000 program. We're asking for $3 million to do it over 3 years' time so that we can further illustrate South Carolina farmers can supply what our neighbors need. Got a few things we want to do with infrastructure within the Department of Agriculture at the state farmers markets to make them serve better. Talked a little bit about processing. I think a lot of you were probably involved, if you're in the beef business, in the survey that Clemson did last year to talk about our meat processing capacity. We think it can be a benefit to our industry if we increase that. The survey told us that, the producers told us that, so we're focusing on that in the in the processing piece of what we're talking about. Move away from that, some other issues that you probably will discuss over the weekend, that's redistricting. What will that mean to rural South Carolina? What will that mean to the voice of agriculture as our members of the General Assembly become less familiar with what we do on their behalf and become more urban-oriented? It will make the job just a little more difficult. So we have redistricting. Let me talk about a few more issues. One I'll mention because just this week I met with the new leadership of EPA. And when we talk about issues we need to keep on our radar, it seems like EPA is always there in some of the things they are capable of. And having met with the new leadership, I can assure you we need to keep EPA on our concern list. I've always said it, EPA is one of those three-letter agencies from DC that makes us use four-letter words in SC. And I don't see any change coming. Let me touch for a minute on a couple of other three-letter issues. And they're not bad, but they will require us to think a little differently than we have over the last years. ESG. Now, that's not a new version of MPK. Does that mean anything? Anyone? Environmental, social, and governance. It is the effort to have an input on how businesses operate, or perhaps how federations operate, or perhaps how industry operates, that you are more customer-focused, stakeholder-focused, the terms we've used over the years, but now is taking a little more, getting a little more momentum on having an impact on some of the decisions you might make at the Federation board level. How are you aware of the environmental impact that you're having? Are you being socially mindful of the customers that you have, the people who enjoy what we do in agriculture? How do you govern yourselves? You say, well, that's our job. Well, people want to have a voice in how we govern ourselves and how it appears that we're doing it. So environmental, social, and governance. And we'll touch on the big part of that is environmental. And I'm glad you're having a discussion on climate, carbon mitigation this afternoon. Let me give you some good news. In South Carolina, we're taking a lead in that. All the talk is about carbon dioxide, and it's causing global warming. Well, if you realize that methane is much more harmful, then what I'm about to tell you is good news. We have a company in South Carolina named Green Gas USA, based out of Charleston. They have gone to several locations where methane is produced through degradation of vegetables or animal products or whatnot in a lagoon. And while historically those gases just go off into the air, maybe burned off, flaring off, you've seen those, they'll go in and capture that methane, clean it up, scrub it, whatever, compress it, put it in the same tanker trucks that we see natural gas being hauled. They'll actually haul methane gas cleaned up to the pipeline outlet in Georgetown, where the pipeline that comes through South Carolina, it actually ends in Georgetown. They'll actually take that renewable natural gas, put it into the pipeline, and sell it as renewable natural gas. Now, the way that makes money for the farmer or for this company is that the BMWs, the Boeings of the world will pay a premium for this because it helps them with their carbon footprint, because you'll hear that term, all the companies that want to reduce their carbon footprint. Well, here's a case where a company wanting to do that, willing to pay, actually brings a benefit all the way back to South Carolina agriculture. So I've told them at USDA, Harry, that we are ahead of the game. USDA seems to be talking about it a lot, but we seem to be doing a lot about it. So I'm very pleased with what we're doing there on the ESG. Let me mention one more, and that is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's something that we should rightfully spend time on. It's basically following the second commandment that Christ told us, treat others as yourselves. Take time to listen, to gain more perspective so that anyone involved, whether it's in our industry or whether it's people who benefit from what we do, take their opinion, take their perspective into your discussion so that your scope, your tent is larger, and people are aware and have the opportunity to be included. I'm sure you'll hear more challenges over the weekend. There are plenty of them. Let me just tell you something that in my time as commissioner, I've learned several things, and one is for change to happen, we'll have to get a little less comfortable with what we're accustomed to. Talk a little bit about that. We're all used to the status quo. We're very comfortable with the status quo. Harry, I'll tell you, as a Carolina football fan, I'm not so sporty on the status quo right now the last number of years. But my point is this. As we look at the issues we're going to face, you got to ask yourself several questions about the organization of Farm Bureau, about the Department of Agriculture, about our industry. And they're these. Are we trying to control the narrative 100%? Do we think we have the resources, the wherewithal to control the discussion? I don't think that's nearly possible in this day and age that we live. Or are you willing to compete for public opinion and support? And when others are competing with just as much passion in the opposite direction, are you willing to get in there and compete? Now, I will say this, and being a member of Farm Bureau, I'm certainly confident in seeing Farm Bureau compete, whether it's water rights or you name it. In South Carolina, we've been willing to compete. I'll say this, the Department of Agriculture competes every year come budget time. I always appreciate the support of Farm Bureau. That's one time that Department of Agriculture and Clemson and everybody gets on the same page on behalf of the agencies that work on behalf of agriculture. One other question you ask yourselves, are you willing to build coalitions with others who don't think quite the same way that we might think, or you might think? You know, I've said it, is the 80% of your goals that you can obtain by working through coalitions, isn't that worth it without risking whatever the 20% you might compromise on for the sake of not getting anything done? So building coalitions, I think Farm Bureau, again, has been very good at that. It is challenging at times. Finally, do you have the capacity to be creative? We talked about, mentioned, can you control the narrative? Well, it's an overused phrase, but can you think outside the box and completely change the narrative? We've seen it happen over the last number of years when a discussion goes one way and all of a sudden it's completely different. So do you have that capacity to be the one that is creative in changing it? They accuse me of that in the Department of Agriculture, but I tell them it's just my ADD. I can't stay on the same subject long enough. I have said it, we have to sacrifice comfort to make things happen. Someone said at one time, if everyone's thinking the same, then somebody's not thinking. So we have to do those things, get a little less comfortable with the status quo. We do have to focus on where we're going with this industry. The most question I get asked probably pretty often is what keeps you up at night, what things out there in the future, and it is where our next farm is coming from. Who's going to grow our food? Who's going to keep South Carolina agribusiness the number one industry in this state? How are we going to stem the tide of the amount of food that we import to this country? How do we let our non-farm neighbors know what this business and this industry and this culture means to our state? I stand before you confident that we can do these things, but also stand before you mindful of the challenges that are always out there. But as Harry said earlier, we have a good team. This is one time we were on the same team. Last Saturday night, we were not on the same team. I came out in second place. But when it comes to talking about the future of our industry, we're absolutely on the same team. And I appreciate being on that team as your commissioner. I've appreciated the opportunities to do that for you for the last 17 years plus, and look forward to continuing to do that. Let me thank you, Harry, for including me this morning. I apologize that I couldn't get there last night. I especially wanted to be there as you honored Landy and the career that he's given the Farm Bureau. I did have a few more jokes to tell, but I heard you got them all last night from the governor, so I won't bother you with that. But let me just close and thank you for listening, and we wish you all a Merry Christmas and wish you God's blessings in the coming year. Thank you.
I think we've got a gift somewhere for you, Commissioner, so it's over there, so don't leave without it. We are now ready to move into the next phase of our meeting this morning, and I would like to call Gary Spires to the stage. He's the head of our government relations team, and he is going to start off, I think, our discussion on local governments. You heard me last night say a little bit about local governments. I can't express to you how important it is for us to engage in the local government arena. We've been engaged a long time in state and national affairs. It is now time that we stay engaged in those two, but we also increase our involvement on local government. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Spires, and he's going to take over from here. The gift is under the table. Oh, yeah.
Just sit wherever you're comfortable.
I think, Commissioner, where's he going? All right, Mr. Spires.
Wherever you're comfortable with. Thank you, President Ott, and good morning. It's good to see everyone. We're excited about this panel to talk about local government and how that arena that we work in is rapidly changing, as Commissioner Weathers was stating. Status quo, we can't live like that. We have to be proactive and bold, and over the next couple hours particularly, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing to get ready for the 2022 legislative year at the State House with our national program, with our regulatory and administrative work that we do out of government relations, but put a lot of emphasis on what we're doing with local governments and particularly how many issues are going on out there right now as we speak. So it is, the state, as Commissioner Weathers said, has changed. It's changing rapidly. It's growing, I guess, bursting at the seams, honestly. We're going through redistricting, reapportionment with the General Assembly right now. The House dealt with it yesterday. They'll come back on Monday, and then the Senate will also come back next week and talk about that. I think it's fair to say we were pretty close. The state grew so much over the last 10 years, we were pretty close to getting another congressional district in South Carolina. You know, 2010, we added the 7th congressional district. I think we grew over 600,000 people. It was going to take about 700,000 to create another one, but they're coming. And over the last 2 years, we've really seen an increase in growth of the state, and that is being felt mostly immediately within the local government arena. These county councils are grappling with this and trying to figure out how to deal with it. So what we did was put together a panel that folks, Farm Bureau, our farmer members, that's been dealing with this. They're on the cutting edge of it, and so what I'm going to do is introduce them, and then when I finish the introductions, I'm going to start with Marilyn and let her kick it off. We actually had a meeting, about a week ago, and I told them if they just replicate what they told me about a week ago, we're going to have the best panel in the world, so because they got some good information to share with you. But this is going to be informal, and as we speak, we want y'all to engage, to ask questions, to raise issues that have been going on in your counties, and so we can get this dialogue going on how we want to address these things. Within the Government Relations Division, we're looking at a lot of things, and again, we'll talk about this at lunchtime today. But, you know, conservation easements, how to protect agricultural land from this growth and what's going on with the loss of agricultural land, you know, how to, you know, incentivize our farmers to keep it in production, whether if it's easements or soil credits, how to deal with land use planning so we don't get zoned out, so to speak, but zoning actually probably can protect us as well, and I think you'll hear some of that today. Things that we normally hadn't supported. I think I'm here and we're going to start supporting some of these things. So enough of me talking. I'm going to let these folks tell you what's going on, but bottom line is this is a two-way session, so please raise your hand if you got something to say or ask a question and we'll recognize you. But I'm going to start with Marilyn, but Marilyn is from Lawrence County. They're dairy farmers. She and Glenn, extremely active with a lot of national organizations, a lot of state organizations, very active within Farm Bureau, Women's Committee. She and the Chamber of Commerce in Lawrence County started having, I guess, political forums, meet the candidate type things. That's led to a House member being elected in Lawrence County and also a county council member as well. They did a county council forum, and so she'll talk about that. Next will be Bert Judy from Dorchester. Bert has been involved in a lot of our regulatory challenges we have had on water. He serves on Capacity Use Area Technical Committee in the Trident Capacity Use Area, which is Dorchester, Charleston, and Berkeley County. But Bert, with what's going on with Dorchester, and I think Dorchester is one of the best examples on what's happened, as Commissioner Weathers said, with our agricultural representation. Dorchester is a very vibrant agricultural county, but it is literally run by urban county council members. I think out of 7 county council seats, 5 of them come from Somerville, because that's where the population is. But Bert got involved with the land use planning committee that they have in Dorchester County and has been working extremely hard trying to protect agricultural land in Dorchester. And Alan Kellett from Greenville County, I guess, Alan, is it fair to say that Greenville is one of those places that this has become a hotbed issue in the last year and a half? Basically, you know, they work hard to get ordinances molded and passed as favorable to agriculture, and then all of a sudden people want to change them because developers are putting pressure on county council folks. They've dealt with some issues with the utilities, the water and sewer utilities, you know, transforming a very beautiful agricultural area, preparing for that surge of growth that's coming. So Alan and the rest of the Greenville County Farm Bureau, it's been phenomenal what they've done, because Greenville is an urban county, and dealing with the county council again that is urban-minded, and that's who they represent, and he'll talk about that. But Marilyn, I'm going to let you start, and then we'll go to Bert, and then Alan, and then we'll open it up with questions and answers and discussion. So Marilyn, thank you.
Okay. You heard from President Duvall and you heard from Hugh Weathers in both of their remarks about being involved in your community and that. And you heard President Duvall even mention dairy farming and the stress and all of that. And it's a crazy occupation, but I still have to take the time to be out there and promoting agriculture. No matter what's going on back at home, we have to be out there. I can remember my work through Dairy Alliance. I speak all over the state to nutrition groups, and Glenn and I were actually speaking to a physician's board in Charleston one time, and it just happened there was a doctor there who had been a dairy farmer growing up as a kid. And as we walked out the door, he said, I became a doctor because I didn't want to work as hard as those 2 people that just walked out the door. But we have to be telling our story, And we are the most trusted group, and that's the thing I found, even speaking in Aiken one time. I didn't realize that there were a couple of activists in the group, and they sat across the table from me after the fact. And I'm glad I didn't know they were there until after the fact. And they were just amazed, and I found out that I actually had made an impact on them. And so it's not often you do on activists, but I did at that particular time. But you got to plant those seeds. And I know growing up, Glenn and I were both 4-H'ers. That's how we met. We were both in Grange. And that's another thing about the importance of this organization. Glenn and I were a National Grange Young Couple in 1966, back in the dark ages. And back then, Grange was as valuable an organization when it came to all of that lobbying and that in Washington and on state levels. Where are they now? Do you hear them? Do you hear about it? And so what I'm saying to you all, this organization is so very, very important to our success. That was the 99th and 100th annual session that Glenn and I attended Grange in Washington, D.C. and in Minnesota. They're not there anymore. That's why I'm saying to you, we have got to be proactive. And so my work then, when we moved down here, became more Farm Bureau, because Grange already here at that point in time, that many years later, as we've been here 43 years now. So planting those seeds, public relations drives government relations. I want you to remember that statement, because who we are and what we are, we've got that public perception that out there. And so that's the reason for being visible. And that serving on it was through the Holstein Foundation. They were building a leadership program, and right there, teams, that's the thing. I was a non-Holstein breeder. I'm a Jersey breeder, but I was asked to be on this national committee to come up and build a leadership program, which is Young Dairy Leaders Institute, which we did this in 1991, and it's still going, and it's really great. And the one thing they taught me at that was you need to be involved in your community in other organizations besides those that are agriculture. You know, I'm a Jersey breeder, I belong to that organization and so on, but all of a sudden I realized the reason that we had to be there and in other areas, whether it be Rotary, mine turned out to be chamber. They kept stressing the chamber because you see so many other businesses and industry and that, and the leaders in your community. So I came home and I looked, and we were the only, there was no farmers. Ag South was the only thing listed under agriculture. So we joined the chamber. And then I thought, well, how do I get involved? I've joined, now what? And they had business after hours. So I started going and networking through the business after hours part of it. And the next thing I knew, because I was so consistent at being there and networking, they called me to be on the board. Well, then, you know, okay, now you're on the board, what do you do? Well, be interested in a committee that kind of relates to you. And so I ended up on the beautification committee. End result, I'm now a past chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. Would I have ever thought that that would have ever happened? I really was concerned at the time because I'm in agriculture, but their youth leadership and then their Lawrence leadership programs, when they were reporting back as I was ending my presidency, they had added agriculture to their program in the leadership, and the Satterwhite Dairy and Newberry was the highlight of all of their things that they did through their leadership program. And they actually, we did a milk toast and all of that. So it's kind of fun how people don't know who we are or what we do, but it's intriguing to them. So take that opportunity to get involved in those organizations that are outside your normal thing. Now we've got lots of team efforts with the chamber. We now have farmers that are members of the chamber. We have farmers that are board members of the chamber, and I'm so proud of that. That is a long shot. They now have an ag website We do an ag industry tour together. We actually do a team ecology, which is teaching all third graders across the county. It's a 4-day event. Farm Bureau women feed all the volunteers those 4 days. So these are ways you got to think outside the box to become involved in your community. Then, when it comes to some of these things that they're going to be talking about, all of a sudden, when you walk into county council, they know who you are. And so, you know, yeah, I may be called the cow lady, but I'm proud of that term. I could care less whether I'm called a cow or not. And so, you know, those are types of things that we've done through our teaming up and the political forums. I know that, yes, when we got our new representative down there, I think we've got some education to do as far as the agricultural end of it. And I got a call from the state, you need to call your representative and get him on board with us. But we had done the political forum, we did the best we could, trying to hope that we had the right person there, but we're going to work on him. So I think at this point, Gary, I'm going to just let them go on, we'll come back to some other things I have here.
Sounds good. Thank you, Camille. Am I on? Can you hear me? It is now. Can you hear me? Got it now? Can y'all hear me? All right. Like Miss Marilyn, I got my start in the Chamber of Commerce also. And all right, like Miss Marilyn, I got my start in the Chamber of Commerce also, and networking with the county councilman and planning board members. And my profession at the time in surveying led me to attending planning board meetings and county council meetings, a lot of times in opposition of zoning regulations and land development regulations, two different things. And by doing that, they appointed me to a couple ad hoc committees for zoning in Dorchester County and tried to use zoning to protect farmland and to use to move the development to the parts of the county that already had infrastructure. I worked with the county council, the new county council member, and on her campaign, and she got elected, and she appointed me to the planning board. And on the planning board, like I said, hopefully we can guide the development toward places that already have infrastructure and keep it out of the rural areas. But seeing the rate of farmland being taken in Dorchester County and being involved in surveying and dealing with conservation and wetland easements, I see that we need conservation to protect farmland in South Carolina. And easements probably could be administered by Farm Bureau. I think it'd be a good fit. But a lot of the counties have conservation boards. And it's very important we get people on these boards to help move this movement along to protect this farmland. A couple things about talking in front of folks or going to these county council meetings is you need to know who you're talking to. Find out everything you can about your county council people and planning board people. And you need to know everything that you can about your issue. When you stand up at that podium, you need to know a lot about it. And you can go to these planning directors and get them to explain it to you. That's their job. They work for you. So use them to your advantage. And over the past, we used loose coalitions to come together and fight against certain issues in low-country counties. We use the Landowners Association, the Forestry Association, and even the Home Builders Association. And a lot of those associations have staff that can do research and help you along with your issues. So find them out. If y'all on the same side of an issue, use them to your advantage. Also, I was on the Trident groundwater capacity use area, dealing with groundwater down in Berkeley, Charleston, and Dorchester County. I started that with applying for a well permit, and we had a moratorium at the time, didn't understand what was going on, and anyway, Rob Devlin at DHEC had told me I needed to come to this meeting, and from that, about a dozen meetings later, we came up with the first capacity use handbook, I reckon you'd call it, and in South Carolina. So we did a lot of work on that, and a lot of education in water, and hopefully we were able to use that in the rest of the state in these other capacity use areas to help out agriculture. Thank you.
All right, my name is Alan Kellett. I'm a Greenville County Farm Bureau president, and as Gary alluded to earlier, we have a very unique situation in Greenville where all our agriculture operations are either in the extreme north or the extreme south end of the county, and Center County is completely urbanized. Well, that urban area is growing exponentially. It came to our attention that as we as a county board perceived it, that every subdivision application that came across the planning commission or county council's desk was being rubber stamped yes, and farmland was disappearing at an alarming rate. So we all jumped into action. I commend my board members for helping me. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have got our agricultural zoning district passed in Greenville County. We really put the pressure on our county councilmen, not just at county council, but constantly making phone calls and emails and educating your neighbors about what's happening. As Marilyn says, everybody's enthused about agriculture, and once you ask and once you tell your story to your neighbor, you'll be surprised at how their values align with those of agriculture. They might not have a dairy farm, or they might not have a beef cattle operation or a row crop operation, but they might have a homestead on 3 or 4 or 5 acres, and that's their farm to them. And they want to protect it just like we want to protect ours. But, there was some trial and tribulation, a learning curve with county council and getting things done. We initially started, like we all have traditionally done, we fed them. We gave a legislative dinner and thought that might help out. Well, that didn't help out. So we kind of started with a more direct approach with Greenville County. And one thing I did as president when we first came on, and please feel free if your county farm bureau is in this situation with your county councils, what we did is we had nice polo shirts made with our Greenville County logo and a mantra. So when all our board members went to county council, we wore our shirt. They knew exactly who we were and where we were sitting in the room. And I think that made the biggest difference in perception with county council. We weren't up there in a pair of overalls and a bunch of flannel shirts. We looked like somebody, and they knew we meant business. And that was when the tide really turned in our favor on getting things done in Greenville County. And, we've got our ag zoning ordinance passed. We have already drafted a agricultural disclosure that we've got on the county attorney's desk, and we're waiting for it to go through and get to county council, and we feel pretty positive that that's going to be adopted. So, we're making some strides there, and I always tell everybody too, please take take notes from what we're doing because it's working. You know, sometimes you get disgusted and you think, well, you know, it doesn't do me any good to talk to these politicians, these county councilmen. They don't want to hear what I want to say. Well, if you say it long enough and hard enough and many times, they'll listen to you. So persistence is the key, and you know, just don't give up. We get one thing through, and before it's finalized, our board and our team, the legislative panel that we have, we're working on something else that's going to benefit agriculture. Because if we don't start now, it's not going to be there for our children, our grandchildren. And that's about all I have.
Thank you, Alan. All right, one thing I want to do is introduce the other person on this panel to my right, and I think y'all know him. That's Chalmers Michael. He is the local government coordinator for government relations and has the great ability to, a lot of these issues, we end up finding out about them when it's third reading and the fire's been blazing. Chalmers has a true talent to go into those places and put that fire out with his charming ways and that kind of thing, and does a great job. And he goes all over the state and does that. I think he's been in all y'all's counties at a time or two. So I wanted to let y'all know what Chalmers does. I know y'all knew that, and I want to say thank you for what you do. We're going to open it up. I do want to touch on a couple of things just to, I guess, highlight a few of the things that they said, and start off with Marilyn when she talked about, you know, working with the Grange when she and Glenn first started out, and honestly, it doesn't exist anymore. So we cannot take our organization for granted. You know, it's something that we have to continue to invest in, to nurture, and to keep vibrant, I guess, and keep at it. So you not only stay engaged with these elected officials and these government organizations that we deal with, but continue to stay engaged with our organization, Farm Bureau, so we can ensure that it continues on and serves our farmers in the state. The other part, too, is, and they all hit on this, about working coalitions and being a part of other groups and basically getting friends out there to help. And that's part of that is the education process on what we do and the PR that Marilyn talked about, so people understand what agriculture does for the economy, which is huge, the biggest economic engine in the state, but what it does for the quality of life in this state. People are moving to this state because of quality of life, and I guess the irony of this, the reason they're coming is because of the quality of life and the environment and that kind of thing, but they're in the process covering all that over with this growth, and so we got to find the balance on that. You know, Bert talked about working a campaign for a county council member when they ran. They love people to help them. And if you get in on a politician before they're elected, when they're trying to break in to that arena, most probably you will have their ear for the life of whatever body they serve in. They don't forget that. And we got example after example. I go to Pickens County, and a senator, a long-serving senator that they helped elect to the South Carolina House when he first started out, he never forgot that. He never forgot riding around the back of pickup trucks around towns while he was campaigning in the mid-'70s. I mean, 30 years later, he talked to me about it. So that is a great example that Bert gave, helped him get elected, and then they helped him get a seat at a table. So we're there. So I wanted to reiterate that. And so anyway, I just wanted to mention those things. I'd like to open it up to you folks. Thoughts and comments. Jack, who has served on county council for a number of years.
About 20 years.
Yeah.
First thing, Gary, you got a mic. Oh, I'm sorry. Appreciate the panel coming out today, and I can tell you I've done a lot of work, a lot of research, and working with your local governments. I'm Jack Knight. I've been on Berkeley County Council for about I guess, almost 20 years now, and Berkeley County is a very growing county. I just had a few comments that I would like to make, really to reaffirm for what our panel has been talking about, and that's the importance of you getting involved with your local governments. As a county council member, we welcome all the feedback we can get. As in Berkeley, as in other counties, there's people moving here from other areas. They bring a whole different culture to this area. Not saying it's good, not saying it's bad, but it's different. And we in a position to where we got to get out and educate our county council members, invite them out to the farm, meet with them, get in on the ground floor with them and build that trust. But as a county council member, I like to make decisions on things that I know that I'm educated about and not ignorant to the fact. Now, a lot of these groups, they'll come to council, they have a big voice on issues. And if other people don't come out to give their side of the story, council more than likely will go with that. And the sad thing about it is when you're not involved in your county councils, by the time you find out about it, there's an ordinance already enacted into law, whether it's a zoning change, a developer agreement, or whatever. So just wanted to reaffirm, just wearing my county council hat, the importance of getting in on the ground floor. And even better than that, when you find a candidate that wants to run and they are pro-agriculture, that's even that much better to get them seated on these county councils. Now, I get calls to the extreme to where people were wanting us to outlaw all outdoor burning in Berkeley County. Now, their concern is California and the wildfires. And after I've talked with them and educated them, we do control burns to keep the fuel off the forest floor to keep these wildfires from happening. Surprisingly, the light came on and said, oh, well, that makes sense. But that goes back to education. And it's not only the county councils, these different groups, environmental groups. We deal with the environmental groups. I'm an environmentalist. I'm not an extreme environmentalist. But when you get them in, you hear their side of the story, you open up, you get a dialogue going, and there's a lot of respect that comes out of those dialogues. And a lot of times you can see the light come on. But if agriculture is going to continue in this state as it is today, it's like anything else. We're going to have to change. We've got to change with the times. And we probably got to do things a little different. My friend from Florence, I think that was great, getting involved at the level that you got in with the chamber. I'm also a past president of Berkeley Chamber. So we understand business. And people don't realize agriculture is the number one business in the state of South Carolina. Ag in the classroom is great, getting those kids educated that food just doesn't come from the grocery store, it comes from the fields. But at this level, at the decision-making level, it is vitally important on the local level and the local governments. Because what we do in county council, you hear, see it, smell it, taste it every day is what we do on that. And there's all kinds of issues, private property rights, stormwater runoff, federal mandates, but we need feedback from y'all to give us guidance on where we want to take agriculture and to help us down this road to get to where we all need to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Well said. Who's next? Comments, questions?
Here, I have another
Absolutely.
thought, if you like. Speaking back, being that I'm on the Registration and Election Board, I have to be careful how I handle some of these political things and that, because I'm supposed to be unbiased in any sense of the form. And the same with the the CEO of the chamber. So, you know, a lot of times when we did these political forums and everything, we had to make sure that we had both sides there and that type of thing, because we can't be involved in a political campaign. So I have to look at it a little bit differently. But I know another opportunity for you is to go out and be poll workers and work at elections. As I know some of my board members that have taken that opportunity to meet and be a poll worker. So one of the things that came up during the COVID time that really was a challenge was that the county council was coming up with the idea of a sunset tax. It would be an 8-year tax to have some projects completed that your community needed, like the restoration of the courthouse was the big one with them. So when that came up, all of a sudden you're thinking, wow, that we have a 7-cent sales tax now. This would make it up to 8 in Lawrence County. So what can we get for agriculture? Well, we got on board with all of those early discussion meetings and county kind of meetings where everybody got together, and we put all of these ideas around the walls, and there were tons of them. I couldn't believe all the ideas that came from all the communities. Well, they started boiling them down, and it was getting to the point it was one for kind of each little community around there. Well, we were an ag community. We weren't Clinton, Joanna, Lawrence. We were the ag community. And we came forward in every one of those meetings, and I got a group back there that was at a lot of those meetings with us in discussing what we wanted in ag. We wanted an agricultural arena, a new place for our extension, and that in Lawrence County. And this is during COVID. Well, thank God, one of our board members, they took and gathered up 6 people to be on this board. And John Irwin was the one representing ag, and we went through this thing during COVID, had these meetings, Zoom meetings, thank God for Zoom, and when it came time for the final decision, the courthouse was at the top of the list, and there, I think, an EMS center, but there was the ag center right at the top of the list, because county council kept seeing us there all the time. We didn't have the shirts, which I think is a great idea, but we were there as a group and every meeting. So in November, when here you're worried you can't get out and campaign on these kinds of things like you normally would, but John was out doing the best to get signs out and everything. Well, we won that sales tax, won by 60% of the vote. We were floored because we know the counties around us didn't get it on the first try. So now we are getting our ag center in Lawrence. And then where Scholl said, well, we didn't get anything in our community. And somebody said, well, did you submit a plan? No. And that's the key. You've got to be proactive, get up and get out and do it. And that's why Ware Shoals doesn't have anything, but almost all our other communities, there were projects listed as the money is there, they will build them. Just got to be active and proactive.
One thing I want to add too, because Alan said this and talked about this, numbers count. When they have these meetings, you don't necessarily have to, everyone doesn't have to get up and speak, but those numbers count. It gets their attention. That room filled up last night. It got the attention of the governor of this state. That was a lot of people, and that was a target-rich environment for him. It works both ways. When there's something being debated that may not be popular and they see a crowd of people coming in with some folks that articulate the issue well, but they see those numbers, it gets their attention. They don't want to make that many, those folks mad. So I know Alan's been saying this every time we talk about this, that numbers count. So I wanted to mention that. Yes, sir.
I'd like to add a little something if I could. We asked these three that they're up here, but any of y'all could have been up here, because as I look around the room this morning, I see beaver issues, I see ditches, I see agritourism zoning, I see land use, I see landscaping, I see wild dogs. Y'all have all become active. I mean, the counties, the third reading, when we get the call about it's the third reading tomorrow, knock on wood, but that has lessened a bit. Y'all have really gotten active. You know, I want to commend you again for being active and listening and being a part of the, you know, getting the council agenda, getting the minutes, knowing your council members. That's been so important to us too. You know, y'all are leading the fight for us through your district directors and your county boards and all that. It's really been a help to help us handle these things, and you know, throughout the 46 different counties, to help us combine and make note of what's happening in Richland County that we can use when it comes up in Beaufort County or in Greenville County. So that's continue to be active as you are.
Thank you, Chalmers. And just to mention, right now, we got fires, I guess as we can put it this way, in Horry, Lexington, Edgefield, McCormick. I just found out about McCormick about a week ago. Chester, York, Berkeley. I mean, we have some major discussions going on in all those counties. So, and that's going on right now as we speak. I do want Oconee County, several years ago actually, created the agricultural committee to advise their local government, which was, it may be the only one of its kind in the state, but that is a concept that we would love for some of the other counties to take on. So I wanted to mention that. Any other comments or questions? Yes, sir, Cullen.
Gary, I'd just like to make a few comments. Thank each one of your panels for the comments and information y'all gave. I too was involved in the chamber, past president, and getting around to meet people and know people, you get an opportunity to express yourself and let others know what your concerns are. And like the panel said, you went over a lot of people. One of the things too, back when I was chairman of the chamber in Dillon County, the Right to Farm bill came up. And our chamber endorsed it. We wrote letters to our legislators, and I got many comments and thank yous from our legislators for giving our perspective of things. Other things too that you can think about, ag in the classroom, career days. I posted things for ag in the classroom on many occasions. I've had breakfasts at my farm. But the one thing too is touching the young people. Career day, we had some in middle school, we had some in high school. And I've been involved in both of them, and several of y'all have through the years. And I think that's a good opportunity too to touch young lives. So I just wanted to make these comments. And Gary, thank y'all for what you do. You do a great job, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Cullen. I got to tell a story on Cullen. When he was the president of the chamber, they had, and Chalmers kind of helped me remember this, talked about wild animal problems, which we're going to write a song about that one of these days, about wildlife and all the problems we have with it. But when Cullen was chamber, wherever their chamber office was, they had a pigeon problem. And so Cullen started killing them. And he killed a bunch of pigeons to deal with that. And we had a little legislative event when he was doing all this. We cleaned the pigeons and served them to his legislative delegation in Dillon that night. And so it was a great hit, and they thought we went and got squabs somewhere, but it was Dillon-grown pigeons. So there you go. That's doing it there. Anything else? Yes, sir. Kirby.
So I add my thank you and gratitude to those of you who are examples to all of us. And anywhere we are in South Carolina, I believe we are facing this population pressure or depressure, meaning some of our counties are dying economically that are so rural, and then others we're feeling the pressures. Are there models out there? Are there other states who have gone through this before us? Because I think we're all hearing this and seeing the headlines and feeling it personally, but what are the best practices? Meaning we can't tell people, you can't come to South Carolina, you can't buy this land. Are there percentages of what is best based on the history of a county? Or how are y'all speaking into this leadership of the balance between economic growth, best uses of land? Our goal is to have this percentage of farmland preserved in our county. I think that's what I feel. I don't know what the real solution is. So any thoughts on that, or from American Farm Bureau that has come out, or resolutions y'all have found in y'all's counties as y'all are speaking to elected officials, so that we've got some ideas when we engage in conversation about what South Carolina will look like in 20 years, or what we want it to look like to preserve that beautiful faces, beautiful spaces piece. So that's the question.
Kirby, that's a great question. I'll tell you, and while the panel thinks about that, we are reaching out to our other farm bureaus on some of these issues to get some ideas from them and try to fit some of those ideas and whatever we come up here in South Carolina within the policies that we have to work with, that we advocate for you folks. So good. That is a great suggestion, and we will do that, Kirby. And I, again, hit on what he said, the depopulation of these rural areas. And again, I go back, as this has happened, they have lost representation because they no longer have a home House member. They no longer have a home-based senator, and they don't have representation on county council. So y'all got any comments on what Kirby brought up?
Yeah, I don't know what that answer is either. It's a tough question. But the vision that I see is in the Low Country maybe is to start within the urban areas where the infrastructure is already located and build outward, and keep county council from permitting or approving sewer that's 20 miles out there in the rural town and running infrastructure, all over the county. So, yeah, I don't know. I have a definite answer for you, but that's just a vision that I have.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody in the state. So I want to thank you for what you do, but I also want to encourage people who are losing population to get out and visit your governments, go to your meetings, because really even in Allendale County, which is primarily farmland, everybody there has grown up there, but I found that the people in county council, they own their home and their land, and so they don't understand when you're losing industry tax revenue and the majority of your population is impoverished, then every time they want a fee or a tax, they're coming to a landowner. And it's just very important to get involved and let them know, because a lot of times it's just education. They don't understand until we educate them on our needs and how to keep the farm alive, and also the economy coming in. And so I look forward to how Farm Bureau is going to help us understand that balance.
That's absolutely perfectly said. I guess we're talking a little bit of doom and gloom, some scary stuff, but looking at my boss over there who's run for office a few times, and the bottom line is everybody in this room has a House member and a senator and a county council representative, where it doesn't matter that they may live in the neighborhood or the suburban urban areas and all that. They have a job to do, and that's to represent you, because you are a constituent. And engaging them and getting that relationship with them and helping them do their job, they will respond to you. I think that's fair to say. They react to folks talking to them and telling them what their needs are and concerns, particularly if you've helped them get there, of course. But they have a job to do, and that's to represent you, and they understand that. But y'all have to be known, and that's the bottom line. Honestly, it's pretty simple, I think. We just engage these people to do their job for us. So, thank you for saying that.
You're in Allendale too. Y'all's issue. Y'all use the newspaper, and you know I think that there was a weekly. It wasn't a weekly newspaper, you know. So you don't have they don't have a daily, but just the fact that you shared the message through, and it was picked up, and it was moved into other newspapers. So y'all did a. Yeah. Yeah.
That's where we have to create our own media.
Yeah.
You know, I see Carrie, our social media person, Stephanie, President Ott talked about this last night. We can create our own media. You know, I guess there's good and bad in everything, and we have to embrace the social media and use that to replace, you know, what you're not going to get through the old, you know, traditional newspapers and things like that. So don't forget that.
Well, Gary, after I heard about Oconee having the Ag Committee there, I've already approached our county council chairman on that, and he wanted me to get more information on that. So that's one thing when I came down here, I wanted to find out more from Alan to see, because that's how it starts, is just one seed here. And then that just, you know, that plants another seed. And so I'm just, you know, I've approached Brown about it, and so just need to bring back some information on that to him. But that's what it takes, just to start somewhere and just keep moving forward and planting another seed.
Thank you.
Public relations drives government relations.
Okay. All right, any questions or closing thoughts from the audience? Yes, sir.
Jason Wright from Greenville County, and one thing as Alan mentioned, the agriculture's in the northern extreme and the southern extreme that we used in the northern end of the county that worked well. Most of what we've been talking about this morning works really well when we're talking to a county council or a portion of our government that is receptive of what we want to say, wants to hear what we got to say, but one thing, it's not always that way, and for sure with our county council, but in the northern end of the county, a year ago, get a sewer authority is a long-term plan, but start taking land, build a sewer plant. And the way we were heard was not by a meeting on the government terms, but the meeting was called by the community at a local farm, and we was making the rules and calling the shots. There's a time and place for that because, yes, it's very contentious, but we summoned our legislative delegation and our county councilman that represented us, and we were in charge of that meeting. So it wasn't 15 collective minutes out of a 3 public hearing process that we could speak. It was 2.5 hours of what that community had to say, and it wasn't all pretty, but when we all left, as mad as some were, our representation knew that they didn't have much of a choice, but they was going to have to deal with it. So that's not always the way. I still think you catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar, But there's a time that I think this community has had to come together and make it be on your ball field and following your rules. You know, it was to the point that one representative got so frustrated that, you know, he said, well, I was trying to help y'all. If y'all don't want my help, well, 250 people told him right then, thank you for your help. You've done enough. and he knew he had to change. So I just say all that to say sometimes we have to pick the forum, you know, and you have to be careful. You don't always want to be on the attack, but sometimes you have to be a little aggressive. And if you manage it correctly, it does work. And sometimes just when you have that meeting, you don't have to invite those folks, your representation. They want to know what's going on. Example of that, this past Sunday afternoon, we were meeting again, and we purposely didn't invite any of our elected officials, but some of them saw it on Facebook that, you know, that the meeting was happening, and they won't be sure they knew what was going on, so they were there. But sometimes, like I say, just sometimes it's there's a time, and it works better to have you know, on your own ground, I guess, and the community setting the forum of the meeting and making the rules.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Anything else from the audience? Panel, any final words of wisdom?
Get involved.
I want to close with telling you folks and telling all my Farm Bureau colleagues, but particularly you folks, for last night we had a federal PAC fundraiser, and it was the very first one we have done like that. I felt really, really good about it. It was and I appreciate y'all making it a great event, and I just wanted to tell y'all thank you for that. And anyway, I think that concludes our portion. So, Larry. Here you go.
Yeah. One of the things that we're working on that I hope you'll take advantage of is our evaluation process. We're using the QR code so that we can do the evaluations online. This session that you just had, this is the QR code that if you'll use your smartphone, focus on it, you can send in your evaluation for this session that we just had, and I'd encourage you to do that. Also, I want to, one of the things that we're going to put up in just a minute is going to be a slide dealing with the Clemson's Corn and Soybean Expo. They're going to be holding it down in Santee on Wednesday, December the 8th. I want to encourage y'all to participate in that and attend that conference if you possibly can. As we're closing out this session, I do want to encourage you to fill out your evaluations inside the back cover of the program. Their evaluations are what we use to help design our programs for future years. So I hope that you'll look at those carefully and try to fill out those evaluations and let us do those. If you would, please make your way to the Farmers Hall. As we mentioned earlier, we don't have the big tent, so we've got all our exhibitors up and down the hall. So we've got snacks and coffee out in the hall, and then we're going to have a luncheon buffet beginning at noon in Kensington A, B, and C, which is right behind us, and we're going to do a panel, or we're going to do a legislative update during that session, so we encourage you to do that. Do take your program and look at all the workshops that we've got going on this afternoon, and please plan to attend as many of those as you possibly can. I think you'll find a number of them that you'll really enjoy on there. And with that, that ends our session for this morning, and we'll see you back at our workshops that start at 11 o'clock.